sense realm. Get out of the mental realm. Enter into the realm of God's mind. Enter into the realm of God's limitlessness. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. So you are doing all things, but through who? Christ. Who gave you the strength? Christ. Does it have anything to do with you? Does it have anything to do with your friend? You say you and your friend come together. So are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? So very quickly, day 1, what did he do? God moved by the Spirit on the deep. He spoke, he created. Day 2, he established boundaries for creation. He brought the vision between things above and below. He called and declared a fixed vision for what he created. 3rd day, seed time and harvest. People like to hear seed time and harvest. So, God created on the 2nd day the expanse that he would call creation. He established boundaries and division between the waters above and the waters beneath. He observed what he did, and he called it in order to create a frame of reference so he could identify and he could define it. Okay? All these things that God did had never been done before. Now, these concepts are so important for you for your understanding. Okay? Realize that everything was created by God. Okay? Everything was created by who? By the word of God, the hand of God. Always remember, it is a message for you and I. God is conveying the truth about himself. He says, I did not do all of this by waving my hand. I could have done it. I could have done it. Okay? I could have just done this. And everything would have come to pass. But he wants us to know something about himself in order to identify his handiwork in our lives. Do you understand? So that when God is working in your life, even if it takes 6 months, 6 years, 60 years, you know God is working. And that is what makes you remain on course. So don't think that because I went to church, I prayed a prayer, I did all opportunities of my life, and I saw something change. It's going to change immediately. Because it's not changing immediately does not mean God is not working. That is why God is letting us see his handiwork. That he can do this. And it changes immediately, but he didn't do that. So why do you expect in your life? If in your life, fantastic. But you have to see that there's a process. So, when you are facing difficulty, what is your response? What is your response? What is to be your response? Let me tell you, whatever you choose, however way you choose to respond, is what validates how you see life. How you choose to respond is how you see life. You see, this world tells us that everyone answers to yourself. That's why we are where we are today. Deal with issue. Let me use Nigeria for example. There was a time only wealthy people had generators. Prior to that, it was mainly, if you go abroad, every hospital has a generator. Every fire station has a generator. Big supermarkets, malls have generators. Because there's every possibility that they will have a power cut. Okay? So, there was a time in Nigeria only the wealthy had generators. So, I guess they spent more money on infrastructure for electricity. And then people became rich, and they too will start buying generators. And so having a generator was not a problem. What was the problem? Getting the diesel. And people were able to get diesel. But now, even the rich and the poor complain about the diesel cost. When you decide to do things individually for your own benefits, this is what it results in. It's as simple as that. Man is so committed to his individuality that he excludes anything higher than himself. So what do? You end up isolating yourself. And that's what has happened to a lot of people. You refuse to accept containment, refuse to accept boundaries, and refuse to accept division. Can you see it? We're on day 3 now. But have you dealt with your day 2? Blessings and harvest come in when? Day 3. Okay. That is man. As a Christian, you look at this. We have a God in heaven who says to us, come to me, follow my commandments, do what I say you should. Testament. The commandments were written down. Thou shalt not do this. In fact, some commandments it was, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. But that was the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ becomes the personification of God's law. The New Testament, God is now dwelling where? Inside our hearts. So we don't need all these rules and regulations. They are inside us. We know what we are to do. Okay? It is a spiritual discipline that is inside us, where we now learn to cooperate with God's process. We learn to cooperate with God's process so that you try to see everything that you lost in the fall being made manifest in your life again. That is why you can have some people who it just seems like blessings upon blessings upon blessings upon blessings. And you're wondering, how come this person's life seems so easy and mine is not easy? Okay? Guess what? You're going to go back to day 1. When you see chaos in your life, as God looked out of the formless deep, what is to be your response? I'm asking you. Ephesians 5:1. Be ye followers of God as their children. We are to do what God did. Simple. We are to move by our human spirit upon the face of the deep and speak as God spoke. God considered the chaos and the darkness that was upon the deep, and he spoke the thing he desired. Light be. What are you saying to the darkness, to the deep upon your life? Are you saying, hey, it's dark? Hey, if I walk too much now, I'm going to follow. Let me just stay in one place. We are supposed to be followers of God. We are meant to be imitators of God. You are not God, but you are a follower, an imitator of God. You and I, we don't have any power in ourselves to back up what happens next. But we are supposed to look upon that thing which you have no control over and say, light be. And guess what? When you say God is going to endorse your will, God is going to endorse your words because he has ratified a covenant with you that you can do so. And this covenant was done by the shed blood at Calvary. That is why you and I can say light be. That is why we can call those things which be not as though they are. For no other reason other than the blood of Jesus that was shed for us at Calvary. Abi? Yes. Okay, so why is it not working for you? I'm surprised no one has said, but Esther, I do that and it doesn't work. Because that's what they tell us. Just speak the word. Who has been speaking? I'm asking, who has been speaking the word here? Does it work? Be truthful. Be truthful. Is it not supposed to work all the time? So is it that maybe your key is a bit rusty or your battery is a bit dim? Don't you ever wonder that why does it work sometimes and other times it doesn't work? And some people say maybe this is the God of faith movement. They'll say to you, you don't have enough faith. Who has said that to herself? Maybe because my faith was not enough. God doesn't play games like that now. Let's go back and see what God did. Let's go back and see. He says he first brooded, then he moved or he fluttered over the surface of the deep. He discerned it, he determined what he was going to do. But God did not speak blindly. He did not speak blindly. When you speak, your words must have power. And if you want your words to have power, you must first move on the surface of your deep. Discern fully what is happening. Look at the light of God's promise. What is God's promise concerning this situation for? Some people, they just look at something and they just presumptuously, they speak faith. They don't discern the circumstances. They actually deny the circumstances. That is why they don't receive. We are told that having then moved on the deep and spoken over it, the next thing God did was He created a firmament. He made a boundary for that. I ask you this morning, are you willing to acknowledge your boundaries? Do you accept and understand the parameters in which you are exercising God's prerogative in your life? There is a certain jurisdiction that all of us have before you can use whatever authority you think that you have in God for God to act in your life. It's a humility for you to understand this thing. Many people say, with God, all things are possible, that there are no boundaries. Okay? Why did Paul say he was not an apostle to everybody? Are you aware? He said, I'm not here for everybody. When God moved, then He spoke, then He created a firmament. What next did He do after that? He divided. Yes? Okay. Jesus Christ said to us, I came with a sword. I did not just come with peace. You have to create a boundary between light and darkness. How would you expect to live in sin? You are not doing what is right in the sight of God. And you can speak the word of God, I think it's going to come to pass. Have you ever thought about it? We are quiet. Many of us, we don't want to create that boundary between light and darkness. Let's just manage what is happening. Let's just manage what is happening. God separated the waters from the waters. He put waters above and waters beneath. You have to cooperate with God. You have to cooperate with God. Cooperation comes after brooding, that is discerning, speaking, accepting boundaries, and enduring division. Until then, God can't call you. God can't call you. I know, does it seem like it's difficult? It's not difficult. Because as we are sitting down, a lot of us, there are things that are coming into our minds. Just certain things that happened in the past, and you're like, maybe if I had taken that decision then. But we are not supposed to look back and say, there's nothing like regret. Guess why? Because we are still in the process. We are all still in the what? Process. I am still dealing with the one. There are still the two things that I'm dealing with. Do you understand? So please don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged at all. Now, the most significant thing that happens on the third day is the establishment of seed time and harvest. Hey, we like that. But remember, the processes and the elements of process are ongoing. They are ongoing. God is still speaking. God is still establishing boundaries. And God is still dividing. All these aspects are not intermittent. They are not terminal. They don't end. It doesn't end. It's a continuous process. But you must have that maturity that once God has spoken, you have to keep speaking as you are speaking. Once God has set you boundaries, you have to continually discern the boundaries and seek them out. Okay? Paul the Apostle did this continually, which is important for us to actually, maybe we are going to do an in-depth study on the life of Paul. Paul was always pressing out onto his extremity. He said, let's look at Acts 16:7. After they were come to Mysia, they essayed to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit suffered them not. Paul wanted to go somewhere else, but the Holy Spirit said, no. So he knew his boundaries. Another person will look at it and say, maybe that's a failure. You have to be humble enough to say when you have crossed a boundary and go back. Are you following me this afternoon? If not, you are falling short of your calling. Do you see that you have to cooperate with God's process, His ongoing process to move in maturity? You are now looking confused. Are you following? How does this happen? Through the acceptance of discipleship of the Spirit. Are you going to be in obedience or you are not going to be in obedience? Are you going to follow or you are not going to follow? We must be willing to experience and install in our character the aspects of God's person and personality by which we face certain things every day. Moving, so I keep on repeating the same things. Moving, speaking, setting and accepting boundaries, dividing, that is standing up for something, so that I can come to the calling of God. Esther, what is my calling? People ask me that all the time. It's a very good question. Until you experience the calling of God, you cannot be Lord over your own harvest. You will not come into the third day of God, where you learn the law of sowing and reaping. Not on the earth, but in your own earth. All of us, we have an earth. I hope you know. The same way we established, if you do the 5 year generation, that we have our own heaven. That is why 2 people can be in a house. One person is blessed. They are crying, open heavens, open heavens. Another person's heaven is no. That will not be our portion in Jesus' name. Amen. Who has tried this thing before? I give and I sacrifice. I want to take advantage of the law of seed time and harvest. Who has tried to take advantage of the law of seed time and harvest? Many people. And you find that it does not work. Do you know why it does not work? Because you are trying to circumvent God's process. You are trying to do your job to the answer. The law of sowing and reaping is a third-day dynamic. How it works is this. For as long as you put something inside the ground, it's going to harvest. So, ideally, for as long as you do good, good will come out. But good is not coming out. Why? Because there's something beforehand that you didn't do. Remember we said blessings, bumper harvest is supposed to be your norm. Shouting, hey, testimony, testimony. It's supposed to be something that that sister every day testimony. Why is it always hard that he's blessed? But that is how life is meant to be for us. We are meant to be blessed every single day. Do you understand? Blessings are meant to be our norm. Blessings come day 3. But what happens with us is that the third day dynamic cannot be established in one's life as God intends until you become accountable to what happens before the third day dynamic. Okay? Many of us will look at the third day, the third day, the third day, the third day, the third day. Okay? Let me tell you this. Note I said the harvest of where? Your earth. I didn't say in SL's earth, or Michelle's earth, or in this earth here. Whose earth? What is inside your earth is what is going to come out of your earth. Do you understand? So, in the Old Testament, the third day is looked at as a day of expectation. Exodus 19:15. And he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not as your wives. Okay? The third day was experienced by the Israelites in the wilderness, and a day that God responded to their obedience to gather to him around the mount of Moses. Okay? Exodus 19:16. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. The third day was a day of full consumption of everything that God has for us, and the full measure of sacrifice of the sacrifice of our lives to His service. Okay? Now, I want to explain something to you about the third day. If I have not dealt with what is in my life, if I have weeds in my life, and I apply fertilizer and everything, what is my harvest going to be? Is it that I was not blessed? I was blessed, but with what? What is my harvest? Okay. Can you identify what day you are in God's presence? Can you identify what day you are in God's presence? If you say you're in the first day, what should you do? You can see that there's chaos everywhere. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to sleep. If you're on the second day, and you know you need to know what your boundaries are, what you should do? You should commit yourself to finding out, what are my boundaries? Like Paul did. Paul always spoke about his boundaries. What is your measure? Are you willing to humble yourself according to God's mandate to do the things that others are not to do? If you cannot humble yourself, if you don't want the sword to establish between light and darkness, if you still want to go same old, say God sees my heart. You know, there are some God sees my heart disciples. God sees I tried. Then you are stuck in the second day. And the second day is actually not a good place to be stuck. If you want a third day reaping, a third day harvest, until you deal with that which comes first, it's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for you. There's nothing, there's no seed you can sow. There's no offering you can give. There's no sweeping you can sweep in the church. Those of you who say, I normally wash my church toilet. I'll come and help you wash the bathroom. You have to deal with what comes first. In the third day, you not only experience harvest, but God becomes the Lord of your harvest. That's what happens in the third day. It has all to do with God and nothing to do with you. God did not just observe seed time and harvest on the third day. He's the one that initiated it. And how could God do that? Because God is a law to himself. He's higher than the law of seed time and harvest. If you ever want to see the law of seed or of sowing and reaping working for you, if you want to go beyond being an observer, you must be willing to rise above the law. You have to be willing to become Lord of your own harvest. Do as God did with his words. Do as he did before initiating seed time and harvest to assure and ensure that what happened was according to his will. He did everything right beforehand. That is how you become Lord of your own harvest. Let's look at Amos 9:13. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman and the planter by the one treading grapes. New wine will drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills. What he's saying is that before your seed touches the ground to produce, you yourself will see it. You will see it. You will have a consistent cycle of seed, fruit, harvest. Seed, fruit, harvest. Seed, fruit, harvest. You know, it was Bishop Oyedepo who said something. He said, when God told him to build, he said he didn't have to depend on anybody's offering. That they really struck. Do you know why? When he built all those, he didn't have that number of congregation. So you cannot say it was a congregation that built, what they call that? Canaan land. It wasn't the congregation that built Canaan land. It wasn't the congregation. You have to see this thing, see as God sees. You have to give God the cooperation He's asking you for. Mature into the measure of the third day dynamic of heaven in your life and in your person. So you ask yourself, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? What is it going to be? Let's look at Genesis 7:4. Now, the account that we read in Genesis is actually instructional for us. Because 1 Corinthians 10:11 tells us that everything we see in Genesis is a narrative. So that we see how the world started. Okay? Let's look at it. Genesis 7:4. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I will have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Oh Lord, how long? Who is still asking that question? Truthfully. Who is still asking? Okay. This is always God's answer to oh Lord, how long? And what you are trying to say is, what time is it? Well, Peter declares to us in 2 Peter 3:8 that a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. So do you want us to calculate? So ideally, if we calculate, we are moving into the 7th 1,000th year from creation. So that means that we are getting to the advent of the millennial reign of Christ upon the earth. God chose to create in 7 days. God did not do an instantaneous creation process. We see that there are 7 days of God's process as He moves you and I into the Sabbath rest. Hebrews 4:11. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Hebrews 4:11 tells us how we should labor to enter into the rest of God. How can I labor into rest? How do we labor into rest? How do we labor into rest? Does anyone know how to labor into? Because I don't know how to labor into rest. Well, guess what? God labored for 6 days, and the 7th day He rested. That is when God opens your eye. When you dream. A sister said she sees what is happening in the spiritual manifesting in the physical. But when you are sleeping and you are not knowing what you are, how do you know? Are you getting it? Okay. I ask you, what are you looking at? What are the things you see? What do you see? What's the most common thing you see as a human being? People. People. So the sun, the moon, stars, that's what they represent. Or you don't know that, that's what they represent. Turn your Bible to Genesis 37:9. You see, when it is night, God opens your eyes to see in the heavens what is going on behind the curtain of the natural. Joseph dreamed that he saw his Genesis 15:5. And he brought him forth abroad and said to him, look now toward heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. In Genesis 15, God told Abraham to look at the stars. And then clarified for him what he was really looking at was his seed, his sons and daughters. Why didn't God show him goats and chickens? And then see, or those cattle, the 1,000 hills, and say, as the cattle are plenty, like this is how your children will be. Why was this start? Sorry? They were. Yes. When God told Abraham to tell the stars, the word he used was stel, which is an ancient writing instrument. He wasn't just saying to Abraham to count. He was saying, Abraham, connect the dots. See it. Connect the dots. God promised that Abraham's seed would be as the stars in the heavens, the sands of the seas, and the dust of the earth. Three things. Three things. He said, your children will be as what? Your seed will be as the stars of the heaven, the sand of the seas, and the dust of the earth. How many sets of children did Abraham have? Are you sure? Okay, let's start. Sister Lara, please read Genesis 17:20. You don't have Genesis in your
Sorry. And as for Ishmael,
Okay.
I have heard you. I will surely bless
Genesis
Genesis
15:5.
15. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, then he said to him, so shall your offspring be.
Star seed, Isaac. Genesis 25:6.
But while he was still living, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from his son Isaac to the land of the east.
Just seed, the sons of Keturah. Now, understand that stars are set in constellations. So I'm a star. You are all stars, not so? And constellations, their origin date back to something that is called the Hebrew Mazzaroth. I did not say you should go and start doing zodiac. Okay, because this is the Hebrew zodiac. Okay, because this is